Hi, my name is Charmain Marie Mitchell and this is Horror by Candlelight, top of the hots. This is a countdown of the top 10 horror novels ever written. Well, in my opinion anyway. So at number 10 we've got Jaws by Peter Benchley. And although it's not considered a horror story as such and more of a thriller, I think that the fear Jaws inspires lends it to being, well, let's face it, it's bloody scary. I mean, how many of us have trod with absolute trepidation into the ocean since reading the novel or watching the film? And I know one person at least, and yeah, that's me. So for me, Jaws goes into the list, and if you haven't read it, well, I'd recommend that you do. Although, be warned, you might not want to ever swim in the waves ever again. So at number 9 we have the Amityville Horror by J. Hanson. I read this book when I was fairly young, probably too young to be honest. And, well, I don't mind admitting that it absolutely terrified me. I can actually remember lying in bed clutching a crucifix for days after finishing the story. And I was obsessed by the fact that I thought I was going to get possessed by an evil spirit. So if you like being scared, it's one for you. Okay, so at number 8 we have The Exorcist by William Peter Blatty. Like the Amityville horror, The Exorcist focuses on spirit possession. And to be honest, just like Amityville, it is terrifying. However, for me, The Exorcist has a slight edge in that I believe the story more. Although they're both supposed to be true stories, so I'll leave you to make up your mind on that one. At number 7, we have The Woman in Black by Susan Hill, which is a truly atmospheric read, and it really does give you a spine-tingling awareness of fear. The Woman in Black is a perfect ghostly tale for a winter's night. If you light some candles, lie back in a warm bath, and probably scare yourself silly, if you dare. But it is a really lovely ghost story, and one of the best. At number 6, we have Red Dragon by Thomas Harris. For me, this is the best story of the Hannibal Lecter series, and to be honest, the one that left me feeling the most disturbed. I read this book a long time before The Silence of the Lambs was made into a movie, so maybe that was why it was like a shock factor. Anyway, the thought of people being picked by watching them on a videotape for me is quite terrifying, really. Now even more so with the onset of social media. It could happen to any of us, so that is a very scary thought. Coming in at number 5 is Hell House by Richard Matheson. And I'm actually in good company when I say that this is the scariest haunted house novel of all time. Because Stephen King said the same thing. And, well, he's not wrong. It does give a whole new meaning to the word scared. So it's a great read and one to try. Right, so at number 4 we have Legion by William Peter Blatty. It's the same author as The Exorcist, but Legion for me is the far better story of the two. Although not everyone agrees, but this book does need some sticking to because it's not always that easy to read. Although, once you do, it's well worth it. And a novel that will leave you breathless and, dare I say it, afraid. Right, so at number 3 we've got The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. And that's certainly a mouthful. Anyway, The Haunting of Hill House is an atmospheric and chilling ghost story. While it's maybe not the best haunted house novel, nor the most horrific, it does combine so many elements of the horror genre that for me it's one of the best stories, well, horror stories ever written. So it's definitely one for the list. So we're coming towards the end now. And we're at number 2. So number 2 is Salem's Lot by Stephen King. and it's by one of the great storytellers of all time. And for me, it's one of the best vampire stories. I think because it tells the story of vampirism in a modern world, but without being ridiculous or silly. And the TV mini-series was very good too. So give it a go. Okay, so we're at the big number one. Dun dun dun. And for me, it can be no other than Bram Stoker's Dracula. I think because it's the story that actually almost invented the concept of horror, and certainly created the concept in movies, and really from the earliest films up until today. And I reckon that for most of us, our first horror movie or novel was derived from the vampire concept, and probably was the story of Dracula. So it's truly an inspiring novel in many ways, and one that's inspired over a century of filmmaking and storytelling. So it's perfect. Okie doke, well that's the end for this week. But it'd be lovely if you could join me next week when we focus on films from different categories in the horror genre and try and establish which we think is the best. Finally, thanks for listening, and it would be really much appreciated if you would like and share. And if you leave any comments, I'll try and get back to you. Okay, bye for now.